But in terms of them really being like the Washington Commanders, right? Really, in Jaden Daniels' rookie, they were legitimate contender Final Four team. Do you think the Patriots could be in a conversation like that this season, or you think that's maybe a little high?
A little high, maybe with the right matchups. Maybe. I think the Patriots, believe it or not, match up pretty well against Baltimore, and that's one of the better teams in the AFC.
Like
Now,
hearing that.
now, in terms of how the Patriots will deal with Buffalo, I think Buffalo has kind of the guy right now, the ace in terms of Josh Allen. But if you can build an offense that can score with them, do it methodically, and then you get a couple of defensive stops, there could be a formula for beating Buffalo, but I think it's a little too early for that. I don't think they're as good as Kansas City. Kansas City has Tom Brady vibes of many years right now, and I think New England can sort of punch them in the mouth as an underdog, but ultimately there isn't enough there. Are they better than the Chargers? Like on paper, probably not ready yet. So I would say no. But if you get, say you beat somebody in the wild card round, then in the second round you get Baltimore. It's not out of the realm of possibilities that you pull an upset given the D line you have, score some points on the road, maybe kicking game helps you, and maybe you could backdoor your way into a conference title game. But it has to be the right circumstances.
Well, and I think it all just still comes back to the quarterback for me. And I think there's so much unknown given what he was operating in. And I wanted to be glass half full last year. So it's like, I don't know too much about Alex Van Pelt, but it's hard for me to imagine. I think Drake Maye looked pretty confident, all things considered, last year. And that blows my mind. I don't know how he could have looked confident last year. It's almost like he was faking it. So I think he's actually going to have legitimate confidence. And I think Vrabel, you think about Milton Williams, some of the ways in which he's pushed him. We talk about conditioning, right? But I think Vrabel has that really unique ability to sort of push you and you love him at the same time. Head coaches can't always do both. And I think sometimes, especially for a kid who's just 22, I think that's going to be a really good elixir, if you will.
I would agree. And that's why the plus 120 on the Patriots to make the playoffs is decent value, because you have a coach he's going to challenge you. And I think you're right. That to me was the biggest mistake of Mayo was you're a former player. You have a level of credibility to be tough on these guys, but still love them. And instead it became, I'm just going to love them and not really be hard on them. Whereas Vrabel, I think, can balance both. And you mentioned the Forged in Foxborough. Seeing Vrabel with like you said, what are the non-negotiables, but also the way he dealt with the team, called whomever it was up, had the little push-pull with them, gave him a little pat on the ass or whatever. There were a lot of guys who you could tell kind of like that. It was genuine. It felt like a real football coach. And
yes,
that's the thing. There's a vibe with Vrabel. The Vrabel vibe is very real. When he walks into a room, you're talking to a football guy who is also not afraid to tell you what time of day it is if need be. And Vrabel comes across as a guy who doesn't take any shit, but he's not a continual prick about it.
Yeah, and I also think he has positive energy about him, right? Like, whereas I think Belichick perhaps at times could be a little bit negative, right? And so I think Belichick, and I just think Vrabel's the type of guy that if I'm a young player, he almost feels like and I had something going on in my life, some personal, Vrabel feels like super approachable, and that feels like an extra sort of gift as a head coach. I just think he's going to get the most out of a lot of these guys. I think health is going to be a big part of it. I'm excited to see what happens with Drake Maye. Excited to see Barmore healthy. I think they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. I really do. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Notice how Vrabel's wearing number 51. Is that Mayo's number in practice?
I love it. It's great. God, what a ribber. It's so fantastic. Did I get to ask you yet about the flag football in the Olympics and the owners voting that these guys can that the players can play flag football maybe in 2028? I can't remember if we did this last week.
No, we didn't. We didn't.
What do you make of by the way, the NFL owners? It's very cute. They're trying to sell it as well to promote the game, both domestically and internationally, and be able to deflect away from the concussion lawsuit that we got our ass kicked in and been trying to tie it up in court before we pay any of these bastards. They get a whole resolution, whereas blah, blah, blah. okay, so they okayed that the players can go to the Olympics. And when Drake May tweaks his goddamn back, running around like this Daryl Doucette quarterback who wants to be the quarterback of these teams, we're going to be all ticked off when he gets an arm injury playing in some stupid exhibition over in whatever country they're crookedly paid for it through the IOC.
Oh, it's so interesting. But yeah, I mean, I'm all about it. I'd love to see let Brady go play or let some of these older guys, let Mac Jones go play. But I don't know if I'd want Drake May. Most of
you
the other
imagine if Brady, though, at like 51 says, "Oh, I need an Olympic gold medal," and wants to be the core? I never thought of that, dude.
Well,
never.
Who's the quarterback for France? I mean, and right. So I think it's I'm trying to get my daughter to play flag football, but yeah, I mean, I'm down with these guys playing it. Seeing football in the Olympics, hard for me not to get excited about that.
Well, it's it was interesting that the NFL decided to let that happen. I would not rule out any money changing hands from the IOC and the NFL under the table. Tush push is still allowed. However, the vote was really close, 22-10. So just made it by a whisker. It feels like the tush push's days are numbered, but Mike Vrabel is going to be the next guy to exploit this. That, right?
Oh,
I'm really
convinced.
Sure
the Patriots, you can be sure, had no problem with the Eagles continuing to do what they did.
Vrabel and crew, they were one of the 10 who voted to keep the thing. And It's crazy that they even had to vote on that, but it is what it is, I guess, at this point, as Belichick would say.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately back in 2006, I think there was a rule in terms of pushing a ball carrier from behind, and and that I guess they never enforced it, so they took that out of the rule book. But that would obviously be the solution. And
just rewrite the rule.
But if I have to vote in a vacuum, it doesn't feel like I wouldn't mind them not pushing a guy, but I think what the Eagles do is far beyond that. So,
yeah, look. Take advantage of it. If it's in the rule book or not in the rule book, then go ahead and make it work. I'm going to ask you a question that I ask people on national radio about the NBA playoffs so far, if I may. I did one of those match game questions where the NBA playoffs this year have been blank. And I got a lot of, in fact, I had some of the ones that people said that I wrote down. Some had exciting, boring, shocking, dang, stinking good was what one hillbilly had, scary, physical, transitioning, and unpredictable. So how would you describe these NBA playoffs so far, Jay?
Well, I'm not going to answer it as a Celtics fan, right?
That is true.
The NBA playoffs as a Celtics fan have been shitty as fuck. Right. But as an objective fan, they've been riveting. Absolutely riveting.
Okay. So the non-Celtic fan in you has dug the playoffs, but the Celtic fan in you, this has been the shits.
No question about it. But I also, as an objective sports fan, I root for underdogs. I root for, my brother always says, nothing greater than seeing a fighter become a UFC champion for a first time. So the fact that we're getting an NBA champion fan base this season that either has never realized a championship before or hasn't since 72-73, I believe, is the Knicks. So for me, that's very interesting objectively as a fan. And while the Knicks winning it is my nightmare, just the same way it is for Jaylen Brown, that's super interesting. I think the Pacers are a very interesting story from the state of Indiana basketball, right? And Halliburton is interesting. And to me, right, you get a guy in Anthony Edwards who everyone's talking about the next guy. To me, it's SGA every time. I want to become an OKC fan.